So, Sonic Forces, Sonic's long-lost return to the boost formula, and it's only been about, like, what, a solid 6 years? Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Anyway, ever since this game got revealed last year, and especially within the last couple of weeks, this game has single-handedly created another huge debate and divide between Sonic fans. I know. How very surprising. You got one side saying, oh yeah, well the game's too linear and there's too many 2D segments. Along with the criticism that I also gave it in my last video, where I said classic Sonic looks nowhere near as good in Forces as in Mania. But then you have the other hand going like, well, actually, you can't really judge the game when it hasn't even came out yet. Maybe they've only showed off the linear segments. Now, both of these at the time were pretty fair points of criticism. A lot of videos of Sonic Forces gameplay on the internet were pretty linear. But then again, hey, maybe Sega just happened to be showing off the linear segments, and we hadn't seen the full stages. That and the fact that even some of the best boost games in recent years, like Sonic Generations, also had a starting level that was honestly pretty linear up until the second half of the stage. But then about a week before Forces came out, and I don't know how this actually managed to happen, but somehow Nintendo had accidentally given out early Switch copies of Sonic Forces, which, as you might have guessed, all that did was just throw a huge canister of gasoline into the dumpster fire that was already the debate over whether this game was good or not. Now you have even more sides of people who've actually gotten to play the game in its full entirety before the official release date. You got people saying it's terrible, and then you got others saying that it actually fixed some of the problems that were in the demo, and just overall even more confusion than there already was. So today, as you would have guessed by reading the title, we're gonna be reviewing Sonic Forces. Yeah, you guys remember when I said I was gonna do reviews like 6 months ago? You guys still remember that? Before I start, by the way, just want to inform you guys that yes, this is my first actual game review on this channel, so Sonic fans, please don't crucify me. But yeah, first things first, let's start off with what is clearly the most important part of a Sonic game, the story. Now, Sonic games in the past have always been sort of weird with their stories. Some make absolutely zero sense at all, some are simple and fun, and some are dark and edgy. And some are just kind of honestly hard for me to watch.
The last time we met, you ruined my nail art. Now I have to reapply a whole new coat.
Oh my gosh, are you serious? I am so sorry.
Oh, well, in that case...
Oh no, what I meant to say is, I'm so sorry that you have nothing more important to do in life.
Wow, Sonic, you're so cool, dude. Gotti. So where does the story of Sonic Forces fall? Remember my prediction of how this game's story would end up in my last video? Which, by the way, I'll add, at the time, I'll admit, I thought it was one of my weakest points in that video, simply because it was based off of nothing but the trailers. But it turns out that, unsurprisingly, almost everything I said in that video was correct. Yes, thank you. I know, guys, I am a certified intellectual when it comes to talking about the story of Sonic games. But seriously, I was incredibly surprised that I was actually able to predict this months ago. I mean, yes, I will admit, even though I made the joke about the story of a Sonic game not being important, it actually is one of the most interesting aspects of Sonic Forces. But just look at this. Look at this side-by-side comparison of what I said months ago before the game actually came out versus what made it in the actual game. Also, spoilers for like a second, so skip here if you don't want to spoil the game. And Sonic's like, oh yeah, I'll stop you. Oh, wait, no I can't.
Okay, let's finish this, Eggman.
Instead of getting help from all of Sonic's other friends like Tails or Knuckles, nope, let's get this random guy over here to do it.
Eggman's forces have chewed through our defenses at Green Hill, and the resistance in the city is reporting that whatever it is that finished Sonic. Sorry, I'm still not used to saying that. Whatever it is has got them running in fear. All except for this brave kid who survived the battle and made it here in one piece.
Who has special powers for some reason and can stop Infinite.
This will be goodbye.
お前はもう死んでいる。何?
Okay, well, that wasn't 100% what happened in the story of Sonic Forces, but you have to admit, that was still pretty similar. So basically, the main plot of Sonic Forces is that Eggman, using the power of the Phantom Ruby, which remember the thing in Sonic Mania that Eggman dug up that made the sound? Yeah, well, basically what that does is give Infinite, or whoever's holding it, the power to warp reality and bring almost an exact copy of whatever they want to life, which is exactly what Infinite and Eggman do. They create clones of Shadow, Metal Sonic, Chaos, who's barely even in this game, by the way. I'm not even joking. He's literally only here for like 3 seconds. And an army of robots. And also that guy from Sonic Lost World, who I still can't remember his name again, because like I said, Sonic Lost World suck. And take over the world. And how that happens is Infinite just kind of backhands Sonic because he's clearly
faster than Sonic!
And everybody else that's left alive forms a resistance. Your custom character then joins the resistance after your team gets annihilated by Infinite. Rescue Sonic, who supposedly has been getting tortured for like 6 months, and I'm not even joking, that's exactly what they said. Which, you know, I thought it was gonna be like Metal Gear or something, where Sonic comes out missing like his right eye, you know, he's missing a leg, he's almost dead. But no, he just kinda straight up walks out after supposedly being tortured for 6 months, and then you straight up just murdered Zavok. Break out of the facility, and from then on you spend the rest of the game trying to figure out how to defeat Infinite and restore order back into the world, all in less than 3 days. Man, what does that remind me of?
Guess what, Sonic Heroes? I finally developed the ultimate weapon. In 3 days, I'll conquer the world.
Oh yeah, and classic Sonic he just kind of shows up out of nowhere, like no joke. He seriously just comes through a portal, and Tails is all like, "Wow, it's classic Sonic. I mean, other Sonic from another dimension that is definitely not 1,000 times better than this one." And I guess the Phantom Ruby holds you into this game because plot device. Now, although I do think the story is pretty interesting on the surface, there are some glaring, obvious plot point flaws that it has, which I'll just list off right now. Okay, so first off, I just have one question for you, Sonic team. Where the fuck are the Chaos Emeralds? Sorry if I offended anybody with my vile and degenerate language there. But like, seriously, there's straight up no mention of the Chaos Emeralds in this entire plotline, which makes no sense to me considering how seriously this game's trying to take itself. Trying to show that there's nothing we can do, the world's being taken over, Sonic, he got backhanded by Infinite and everybody's freaking out. Like, boy, classic Sonic literally by himself with no army, no custom hero, none of that. He went in and he defeated Eggman in the supposed canon prequel to this game. Sonic Team, did you forget how he did that? Oh yeah, I remember. By using the Chaos Emeralds. Like, Sega, you could have at least came up with some stupid explanation as to why they're not in Sonic Forces, like what Unleashed and Adventure 1 did when they made them powerless. Or maybe even have Eggman defeat Super Sonic like he did again in Sonic Unleashed and make it really feel like everything was hopeless. But nope, just no explanation at all as to where the Chaos Emeralds are. Another problem I have with the story is how underdeveloped Infinite is. Like, he's honestly one of the most interesting villains I've seen in a modern Sonic game, considering that he's actually a threat and can actually screw with the levels using the Phantom Ruby and actually affect the gameplay, whether it's through boss fights or in the city. And also has a really, as much as I make fun of him for being edgy, is a really great theme song. But there's seriously no explanation at all to his backstory in the actual game. Like, come on, we don't even see it without his mask off once, or learn why he's working with Eggman, not even in Episode Shadow, which the whole point of it was to explain who Infinite was and where he came from. Like, Episode Shadow is so pointless in terms of plot that you honestly can just skip it. Like, you do not even need to play it. Like, let me just summarize the plot of what happens in Episode Shadow. Shadow just happens to be walking along, in the forest, but then Infinite is also there, and then Infinite tries to kill Shadow, but he just fails miserably and just dies. And then Shadow's like, you suck, dude. Like, you're not good at fighting. Just don't even show your face around me, because, you know, you really suck. And then he just chaos controls out of existence. And Infinite's like, no, you Shadow, you can't make fun of me. You know, I'll be edgier than you. I'll actually be edgier than you, and I'll kill everybody. And when I say that, I'm not even joking. You literally do not even get to see him without the mask unless you go over to the Sonic Twitter, scroll down a little bit until you can find the Sonic Forces comic in there. This 2-page comic came with more information about Infinite than the actual game, which a casual fan would never know. Like, a casual fan is not gonna think, let me just go over to the Sonic Twitter. No. The only reason I know that is because I follow him. But I think I've solidified my point here about the flaws of the story. A lot of interesting concepts, but a lot of plot holes as well. But now that we have the story out of the way, let's talk about the gameplay, which is undoubtedly the most controversial part of Sonic Forces. Now, before I dive into this, I want to inform you guys that this game was not created by the same Sonic team that made Sonic Generations and Colors. Unlike how the advertising just straight up lies to you in the first trailer. Now that we have that out of the way, let's move on to the gameplay, which we're going to be splitting into 4 main parts: Modern Sonic, Tag Team stages, Classic Sonic, and the Custom Hero stages, which is where we're going to be starting off with first, since it's simultaneously the most unique and controversial part of Sonic Forces. Now I know, like I said, I'm going to get absolutely crucified for this, but I actually disagree with the god of YouTube gaming, Video Game Donkey, on the Custom Hero stages. At first glance, ever since I saw the reveal, as some of you might know, I was a little skeptical about these stages. I, like many other people, had assumed that these stages were hands down going to be the worst part of the game. But now that the game's finally out and I've gotten a chance to play it, I actually kinda likes them. While yes, it's true that 60% of the level design in these stages tends to suck, and I'm looking directly at you, Aqua Road, I didn't actually hate them. Basically, the Custom Hero in general is set up like this. You have these things called Wispins, which are weapons you can give to your Custom Hero that essentially do 2 things: a simple offensive attack and a super move, which you can get by running into the corresponding wisp of your weapon. These super moves can grant you more movement-based perks, which most of the time can allow you to obtain red rings or just to screw around, like floating with invincibility, the burst move from Colors, a small range of teleportation, being able to create blocks in midair, a lightning move which allows you to follow a trail of rings or enemies, which, let's be honest, we all know this is just an off-brand version of the Lightspeed Dash from Sonic Adventure 2. Honestly, the Cube Hammer, drill weapon, and the burst weapon I didn't end up using too much, because for the Cube, it just cannot do air attacks no matter how hard you try. The burst move was just overall kind of boring to me in terms of movement, and the drill weapon just completely sucked. To use it, you'd have to spam the attack button to charge it, which would then blast across the stage, which as a concept sounds fun, but ended up being pretty annoying, especially when you're trying to attack enemies in tight spaces like one of the first few Custom Hero stages, and you just end up blasting across the map. But for the rest of the weapons, I actually had a lot of fun with them. The Asteroid weapon by far was one of my favorites, because it could lock on to 5 enemies at the same time, and it was sort of like a shotgun, but in a Sonic game. I also really enjoyed using the lightning weapon. While it did spaz my character out like 10 feet forward every time I use it, I did enjoy using it to blast through enemies and travel through rings. Like I said, it's almost exactly like the Lightspeed Dash from the Adventure series. Along with being able to unlock the Wisp weapons, you can also unlock upgraded versions of those weapons, which sometimes can make your movement options better, give you longer time to use your super move, or just more rings, which does in turn give the game more of a replay value. But oh boy, now we're going to get into the part that you've all been waiting for, the character creator. Now let me tell you, if this was the main reason you bought Sonic Forces, you are not going to be disappointed. Now I know I should have probably mentioned this earlier, but Sonic Forces also decided to bring back missions, which are honestly pretty easy to complete. Like for example, look at this extremely challenging and difficult mission right here, like a boost in a Sonic stage. Yeah, unless you're like a certain games journalist, these missions are gonna be pretty easy for you to complete. If you're thinking, why did I mention that now? Well, that's actually how you unlock clothing for your custom character. You can easily make almost anything you want, like making your character super edgy with tribal tattoos to let your fellow Sonic OC friends know that you're part of a gang, a dollar store version of Sonic, or even an absolute abomination to the planet. At first I was going to ignore this feature, but I'll admit I did have a lot of fun customizing my character, whether it's to make my character unironically wear a hat that says gamer in all caps on it, or just look like he's seen some things that he just cannot unsee.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Although I would have liked to have seen what my character looked like without having to actually equip it and lose whatever you were previously wearing, I will admit this feature is surprisingly pretty fleshed out. Honestly, as much as people would disagree with me on this, I didn't actually hate my time using the custom hero, and I liked it as much as every other gameplay style. Recently, for some reason though, I've noticed people have a problem with the controls of the custom hero, which I don't really understand. Maybe it's just because I have the PS4 version, but I honestly did not really have a problem controlling the custom hero. Now that we got that out of the way, let's move on to the modern Sonic stages. So, have you played Sonic Generations or any boost game in general? Well good, because there's not really anything that's different in terms of the boost formula and how Sonic controls. But along with the custom hero stages, the biggest problem with this game is, of course, as most of you might know, the level design. Unfortunately, the modern Sonic stages were where I noticed poor level design the most, considering that the majority of the game's levels are really short, some even taking a little under a minute and 30 seconds to complete. And given how modern Sonic as a formula works in the first place, since you're already going to be holding down the boost button for the majority of the stage, you are definitely in some stages going to notice how linear they are and how you're just running down a straight path and doing absolutely nothing. Granted, I wouldn't say all modern Sonic stages are like this, but when your stages are short, it's definitely noticeable, which is honestly why I think they should have just combined some of these stages into one. So even if some of the level is just you boosting down a straight path, it would at least be overshadowed by the rest of the stage. And of course, modern Sonic also had to be where most of the QuickTime events got placed. Oh yeah, you guys remember QuickTime events? You know, of course, the thing that according to AAA developers will make the game more cinematic and will clearly and most certainly immerse you into the cinematic experience. What, you don't believe me? Ha! Well, explain this, gamers.
Help! Please! Someone! I'm going to die!
Okay, but seriously, why? Now luckily for us, there's only about 4 of them I think in modern Sonic's campaign, but they suffer from the same fate that almost every other game with QuickTime events has. Why couldn't I just do that in the actual game? Other than the occasional bland level design, which like I said is the biggest flaw of the modern Sonic stages, that's pretty much the only things that really bugged me and that made this game suffer compared to other boost games. I will add though, there is one new thing about the boost that I do like. When you boost in mid-air, instead of completely killing off your momentum like it does in Generations, it flings you upwards a little bit and actually keeps your momentum, which is actually a pretty useful improvement. I found myself using it in some of the 2D sections to get over some tight platforming, so it was actually pretty useful. Now that I've gotten modern Sonic and the custom hero out of the way, let's talk about a combination of the two, the tag team stages. So, have you played Sonic Heroes? Well great, because that's pretty much what this is, except not as good. Tag team levels are typically set up like this. Use Modern Sonic to boost through the levels and go, fast, like what Sonic does. And use your custom hero to plow down through enemies or occasionally reach other parts of the levels with red rings in them. And at the end of the level, or occasionally in a boss fight, you spam the jump button on your screen, and then your custom character and Sonic just run into a straight line until you kill the boss. Now from the looks of it, I'm pretty sure almost all of you can tell from the gameplay how linear the double boost segments are. Hell, you can even fail them completely and you'll still be perfectly fine. Sonic just trips for like a second and then you boost anyway. But despite the linear segments, I still actually managed to enjoy the tag team stages. While flawed, there are some really good ways how to actually do these stages right, like null space for example. But now let's move on to the second most controversial part of this game, the classic stages. But before we do that, I have to stress one thing about Sonic Forces that I've been seeing people complain about since day one. You cannot compare Sonic Mania to Forces. That's just not fair. Why, you might ask? Well, because if you think about it, and have actually done more than 2 seconds of research, like I said, this game was made by a complete group of noobs, okay? This team had barely even worked on a Sonic game before, except for like one guy who worked on Sonic Lost World. Sonic Mania, while yeah, it was made by fans, they only had to focus on perfecting and revising one gameplay style. The team of Sonic Forces, however, had to focus on Modern Sonic, Classic Sonic, the custom hero, and the tag team stages, which is a lot of things to pay attention to when you have a team that's almost entirely full of noobs. Now, I'm not saying you can't compare the classic stages in Forces to Mania. That makes sense to me considering that they're both the same gameplay style, and I'm not trying to excuse the fact that Forces obviously has its problems, especially in the level design, but comparing both games overall just generally is not fair. But like I said, let's move on to the classic stages. Ironically enough, not the modern stages, not the custom hero stages, not even the tag team stages in this game, but these stages actually disappointed me the most. Well, yes, I do like how they added the drop dash in these stages, and I guess now are keeping it as a permanent part of Sonic's arsenal like the spin dash. That's literally the only thing that this game takes from Mania and does right. It is honestly a major step back. There's no use of elemental power-ups, and the levels are just really slow to play through in an auto-scrolling stage. Really? Who actually thought it was a good idea to put Classic Sonic in an auto-scrolling stage? Why did you do this? Now, I'm not going to say these stages are terrible. They do play like how you would expect Classic Sonic to play like, but there is one major flaw with them, and that's the physics. Honestly, I'd say they're as bad as Sonic 4. There were certain parts that I'm going to show off right now where the physics just kind of went absolutely mental. Basically, with the classic stages, to sum them up, if you do what the game expects you to do, like using the drop dash and rolling constantly, then yeah, for the most part, they control like how you'd expect Classic Sonic to control. But other than that, Classic Sonic is honestly the worst part of Sonic Forces. Like I said in my last video, he should not have been in this game. But now that we've talking about the gameplay and the story, let's talk about something that's actually good for the most part, the presentation. In almost every single stage, there's actually a lot of things going on. Like in Metropolis, for example, you have ships flying around in the background. In Sunset Heights, the entire city is on fire and it's completely destroyed. If there's one thing that this game does right, it's the spectacles. I mean, I will add though, that one thing that did throw me off was that if you have a bird character, for some reason they gave them teeth, which is, not gonna lie, that's pretty disturbing. But like I said, the game visually looks pretty stunning. As for the music though, that's where the presentation can start to get a little iffy. I'll say this though, the vocal tracks like Aqua Road are actually really good. For some reason though, Sega tried to go with the more electronic, like dubsteppy feel than rock, and for the most part, like I said in the vocal tracks, especially the Shadow song that was a remixed version of White Jungle, it works. But in the classic stages, no, just stop. turn it off. But anyways, let's get down to the real question. Would I recommend it? If you can get over the flaws that this game has and view it as its own standalone game instead of comparing it to Sonic Mania, then sure, buy it. I personally actually enjoyed it more than Lost World, but obviously less than every single other Boost game besides Unleashed. But if you're purely a fan of classic Sonic, don't bother with this game. It's not worth it. But yeah, those were my opinions on Sonic Forces. If you have any differing opinions than me or anything that I could improve on in terms of the video, then please tell me down below. And other than that though, thanks for watching and goodbye.
Moonlight all around, shadows on the ground.